Hello and welcome to Doing Does DVD, and this is Disney Classics number 2, Pinocchio. Now the thing about Pinocchio is it's another one very similar to Snow White in that I know I've seen it, but it's been so long that I basically don't remember anything about it. It's probably been longer ago that I saw this compared to Snow White. Add to that the fact that it's a story that's been retold less times than Snow White means I remember very little about it. There's a wooden puppet that wants to be a real boy whose nose grows when he lies, and that's about all I can remember about the story. Beyond Pinocchio and Geppetto, I couldn't tell you any of the other characters' names in the story. I couldn't tell you if there are any songs in this film. There probably are, but I don't know any of them. So this one's going to be a bit of a short intro because I have very little in the way of expectations for this one. It's basically going to feel like it's brand new, I think. So let's see. So Pinocchio, at least compared to Snow White, has a much better overall concept of storytelling. There's still a fair amount of direct exposition, but in this case, rather than a title card you have to read, it's narration. It's slightly weird fourth wall breaking narration that speaks directly to the viewer. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, it's just not the usual way of doing things. Musically wise, this is a lot more memorable than Snow White, although it took me hearing them again for me to actually remember them, but I should have remembered things like When You Wish Upon a Star and Actor's Life for Me, or especially after the Age of Ultron reference, I've Got No Strings. That's simply a case of not having seen this film for many years. Now again, much like Snow White, I have no knowledge of the original story on which this is based, but the thing that strikes me the most about this story is that the further and further you go into it, the weirder and weirder it gets. And that's even considering we start at the point where a wooden puppet gets turned into a real person. And you know, he's a puppet in his first day of life, so I can sort of understand being seduced to be an actor in a puppet show, seeing as he is a puppet rather than going to school. But then we have all of the bad boys being taken to Pleasure Island, which sounds rather dubious, and then suddenly everyone's drinking and smoking cigars and then turning into donkeys. Sure, this is a world where fairies exist, but the whole donkey transformation thing just comes out of nowhere and is never explained. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket just leave the island, and presumably the rest of the kids stay the rest of their lives as donkeys. We never hear about them again. So Pinocchio gets home, finds out that Geppetto's gone out into the world in search of him. We know, which is fair enough, he's gone off to some island, but it feels like he only went to the island the night before, like he's only been gone one day. And somehow in that time, Geppetto's gone out to sea and been swallowed by a whale and surviving in a shipwreck inside there for some unknown amount of time. The timeline makes no sense, the situation makes no sense, none of it makes any sense anymore. What? We know maybe there's some metaphor or allegory I'm missing there, but I just don't get it. Visually it's all fun and entertaining, but as soon as you try and apply any kind of logic to the situation, the whole thing falls apart. The main star to me though, who we've got to give a shout out to, is Figaro the cat. This whole thing would have been far less entertaining without him. And so in summary, this was much more entertaining than Snow White, but a little bit nonsensical, but I don't know whether that's the fault of Disney or the fault of the original story. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next week with Fantasia.